And we're going to get started. So thanks everyone for coming today on this Thursday during many spring breaks. We appreciate you being here. After our last session, one of the biggest pieces of feedback was increasing student engagement. And so as a team, we kind of got together and tried to think about how can we increase student engagement in a time that we don't have all of our kids here, right? Typically, I would say, praise them, right? Great job listening, Megan, or good job, Bonnie and Sarah. I like how you're looking at me in the Zoom, but we can't necessarily do that when our kids are home. So we got to thinking that choice is a great way to get students kind of engaged, because we all know that when we want to do something, we're much more likely to engage in it in a time when we have lots of options. So we're going to start off our Zoom call, which is a couple of ideas that we came up with or that we have shamelessly stolen from some of you great teachers that have got kids engaged. And then we're going to kind of break into two groups. Since we have a smaller group today, we're going to do kind of a primary pre-K2 group and then a 3 through 8 group. And we're going to work on creating a choice board that we could kind of push out to our kids and hopefully give you something that you can use going into next week or even the week after to create some student engagement. Coaches, I think we know lots of people here, but do you want to introduce yourselves? That way we can make sure that everyone knows who we are as we're talking.
I'm Sarah. I'm Sarah Skoda. I'm a literacy coach, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Ilana. Oh, go ahead, Ilana.
No, go for it, Stacey. Go.
Okay, I'm Stacey Ginocchio, also a coach with big shoulders, and background is in middle school, but happy to help out with whatever.
I'm Ilana, and I'm at a number of schools and work with a number of you. And my background is literacy in K-8, and I apologize, I am working from home today, and I have my 1-year-old right next to me that I'm trying to feed her little snacks to keep quiet. So if you see me looking around, it's just because there's a real little person next to me.
Alana, when we first started, someone apologized for their cat, and I said that cats and babies are the best part of working from home Zoom calls. So we'd be very happy to see the baby.
Yeah, she thinks it's very funny that I'm talking to a screen right now.
That's great. Sarah, if you want to go ahead and get us started.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that we thought about as far as increasing student engagement is by connecting to other content areas so I'm going to talk specifically about art. And we just kind of came up with a couple of ideas that you can connect art to literacy-based activities to increase student engagement and kind of give students a little bit more of an opportunity to extend what they're learning or what they're reading about. So we have a couple of different artists, Mo Willems, Jarrett Krososka, I think, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and Wendy Mack. And so each of those we thought would be great for different grade bands. So like pre-K to 2 for Mo Willems, and then 3, 5, 6, 8. So Mo Willems obviously is the author of Elephant and Piggy and Pigeon books. And so just we thought some ideas of, reading one of those books, and then watching some of the lunchtime doodles, if you've seen those before. They came out like the first week of quarantine. So there's a whole series of YouTube videos of lunchtime doodles that Mo does that teaches you how to draw some of the different characters. So being able to read one of his books and then using what you learned from the doodles section, the videos, and, writing your own ending to a book, making up your own book, adding another character into one of the stories and drawing, what it would look like. So just some different ways to include some art into the reading and writing aspect. Jarrett, JJK, he is the author of the Lunch Lady series, which is a graphic novel series. And it's, I don't know if you've ever read any of it before, but it's really engaging and students really love. There's a whole bunch of them. And so he also does a YouTube multiple videos series on how to draw, and we kind of came up with some different ideas of maybe making up your own graphic novel. There's the link here, this first one where it says make a comic book. That one, there's a book on Epic called like how to make your own comic strip or how to make your own graphic novel. So having students read and then making up their own graphic novel, either on paper or using like an online comic book creator. So I linked one here, but there were a bunch when I was Googling. So that can be a way to kind of connect with some of students in that age range. And then Wendy McNaughton, she is an illustrator. I recognized her because she did all the art for Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. But she's done a number of different things, and she does a lot of like diagnostic art. So she's doing a lot of labeling and teaching through her illustrations. And so she also has a whole series of YouTube videos. And then, so just some ideas for some of the higher level or the older students, reading a book, learning about a certain topic, and then illustrating and labeling that, like, you know, the most important parts of the text or just some different ideas. The last link is also a virtual museums tour. There's like the Louvre, the Met, Musée d'Orsay, tons of different famous museums have links to virtual online galleries. So having students learn about a certain artist and then going through and analyzing and seeing that work in person, even though it's not really in person, is an idea just to increase student engagement, pull in some of that love of art and doodling and drawing, but also connecting it to that literacy aspect too.
Thanks, Sarah. I was thinking, I cannot think of the museum. Is it the Getty Museum maybe that's doing it? That they're having you kind of create the famous paintings and kind of pose as a famous painting. I was thinking how, as you were doing that virtual museum spiel, how fun it would be to have our kids do that and put that on something like Seesaw and then write a little caption about it, either about the experience. It could be kind of like my personal narrative, or being like what's happening in the painting. I have to say, I've been trying to convince my husband to do that with me. No luck yet, but maybe next time. All right, Stacey, do you want to take it away with building community?
Yeah, so when we think about building a reading community, this is something that we do a lot at the beginning of the school year. We try to get our kids convinced that this is a place where we talk about books and we recommend books to each other. We spend a lot of time finding a good reading spot and, you know, posting our book recommendations on the bulletin board and getting all those systems in place. And so this is a time when we want to think about how can we move those systems online instead of abandoning them. So Teachers College Reading and Writing Project did a pretty good webinar on this, and the link is right there about how to nurture a virtual reading community. So I just stole a couple of their best ideas, and I'm giving you sort of the Cliff Notes version right now. So one of the things that they recommend is, and we've mentioned this before, is sending home like a reading life check-in, just to ask students, hey, how's your reading life going? Do you have the books that you want to read? Do you have a quiet spot to read? Who are you talking about you're reading with? And then when you get those responses, you can use that as a starting point for some one-on-one phone calls with kids to help them kind of problem solve, make sure they're reading, make sure that they have what they need. We know just from, like, for me in middle school, Classroom Management 101, kids are more likely to do what we ask them to do if they trust us and they feel like we respect them and care about them as individuals. And so these kinds of check-ins are going to help build those relationships, build trust, and so kids are going to be more engaged and more, you know, they're going to do the work more if they feel like they have some buy-in. So that's a good way to kind of foster that. Another thing, and then the other link here, the Reading Life Check-in survey, that's actually a link to a survey that Kristen Zemke made that's more of like a social emotional check-in, but you could just add any reading specific questions you want to, just make a copy of it and turn that into your Reading Life Check-in survey. Another thing that we do in our classrooms is we have reading partners, right? We have kids turn and talk to each other. We have them sit and chat about what they're reading and ask each other questions. And I think that you can build that in without making it a lot of extra work for yourself, right? We don't have to be having like an extra Zoom call with every reading partnership. They can talk to each other. They don't have to talk to you about their reading. But I know that for me, when somebody's asking me how my reading is going, I'm more likely to read because it sort of helps me stay accountable. But also, it's fun to talk about what you're reading, right? If you just read a book, you want to share, something really great, or something, if you read something really terrible, you want to tell somebody how terrible you thought it was. So give kids, it can be their best friend, but just encourage them to call your reading partner twice a week, or tag them twice a week and talk about how your reading is going. And that can kind of help build that community. And then whatever you're doing for recommending books, right? Think about how can we move that online. So whether it's a Padlet, whether it's a Flipgrid, even just something like a Google Slides where every kid has a slide, and they could be posting some kind of book buzz, right? And so we're pretty familiar with the traditional book buzz where you just give kind of like a movie preview trailer without spoiling and it was about who's the author, why did you like it. You could also give them other choices, like in the webinar they suggested, you could do a 10-word book buzz. So sort of like those 6-word memoirs. So for your really poetic kids, they might just like a brief poetic 10-word, what is this book about? For your kids who are a little more dramatic, they might want to do a first-person one where they become the main character of the book and then tell their classmates about what goes on in this book from the character's perspective. So giving kids some choice about how they buzz about books can make it more fun and engaging, but then also making those book recommendations in some kind of central online location so that kids know what to read next and they can start adding to that want to read list. So anyway, it's a decent webinar if you've got an hour to kill, or if you want to know more, just let me know and I can give you further clip notes.
I just want to piggyback on what Stacy shared. On the YouTube channel, one of the videos that I recorded is all about a reading log and creating a reading log at home for probably 2nd grade and up. So if you are interested in looking more into that and helping students do that at home, that would be a great video to check out.
Thanks, Alana, and I'm putting that in the chat as well. I'm trying to keep up with all of these great resources you guys are sharing, putting the links in there at the same time. So I can't take full credit for this. I just get to introduce it to all of you, but many of you know Naval Karuni from NQC Literacy, the founder, and her daughter is doing a poetry challenge right now, and she has seen a ton of engagement through this class challenge. So this kind of example here on the left, this poetry reading challenge, I stole straight from Naval, and her teacher just created, or her child's teacher just created a Google Doc. And basically just enter in the date, the poem that you read, the author, and the student name. And you'll notice that I blacked out the student names, but some of the poems are written by the students, right? I'm writing a poem and I'm reading it, and we're trying to see, can we get to 150 poems, 300 poems? So thinking about how can we create this idea of challenge. I know one of my favorite things in the classroom was creating class challenges around reading, around math facts, around even student behavior. And so thinking about, similar to what Stacey said, how can we bring those things online? So I've seen a number of teachers sharing things on Class Dojo. So, when students get an award for reading a number of books, kind of sharing that out there. Or if you have systems that do built-in rewards like IXL, or, they get iReady points, kind of sharing that with the whole class and showing that, look, Alana has read 2 books this week. Let's celebrate that. Some other options, if you're doing a morning meeting or you're doing some asynchronous learning where you're recording yourself, you could kind of use just like a paper thermometer to color it in and share that on your Facebook page or on your class website. Or I used to use a paper chain and say, when this paper chain gets to the ceiling, to the floor, we're going to have some kind of class party. And while we can't have a pizza party, we could always have a class Zoom dance off. Or I have even seen like win one-on-one Zoom time with a teacher. So eat lunch with a teacher. If you read X number of poems, or if you read X amount of books, you're going to be invited to a special Zoom time with your teacher. And kids love that because they get to, see into your house and see the way you're living and see that cat who walks across your lap or that baby that you're feeding snacks to. And that can be really motivating for them. So thinking about how can we create a little bit of competition or a little bit of we're all in this together competition online so that our kids can feel that excitement about reading or writing.
So our kids are home, and that means they are in front of screens a lot. And how do we use these screens to our advantage, and teach into these tools that they're already using? So one thing that I have noticed as a parent, and as a parent of children who love to watch TV, as I'm sure every other child does, is there are so many amazing documentaries and good learning programs on these streaming services that we can use as teachers now, because they're at home. And so also for parents and families, sometimes putting your child in front of a screen is a really nice break in the day. And how do we maybe encourage more educational screen time as opposed to what else they could be watching? So I just kind of made a list of some things that I have noticed. That is a link there to a New York Times article all about really great family documentaries, family-friendly documentaries on different streaming services. Some of them are listed here. PBS has many really great shows for our younger students. And I'm thinking like my kids who are more pre-K, kindergarten, like Wild Kratts. There's a lot of really great shows that your kids are already watching. But how do we kind of take what they're already doing and maybe encouraging, switching from some other shows that they're watching and perhaps creating a teaching point that goes along with it? So maybe doing a research project on an animal that they love. I just discovered the Disney Channel. Well, I knew it was there, but I've now become a member since this whole thing has happened. And they have an amazing National Geographic Disney Channel that's just for kids. And they have shows on like all different animals. So I'm not saying that, of course, not every parent has access to all of these, but there are so many out there. I included YouTube, Netflix. There are so many out there that we could encourage kids to be watching and sharing, what they've learned with each other. Perhaps this is like a Friday afternoon. You're going to watch find a documentary or some nature show and learn about an animal that you love and share your learning with the class. You could also model for your students this learning yourself by saying, and maybe you're going to have some expectations coming out of it. You decide depending on your students and the grade level. Also live streams. There's a lot of, and the hyperlink there is to an article with a lot of different live streams happening of different zoos. And I did the explore.org, and you can actually see, I was watching a mother with her little baby kittens and how she's taking care of them. And it's just a really wonderful way to get out of the house. And especially for our kids, if we're struggling with enough books to read, how do we also use screens to our advantage? Because I doubt many of our students are having a hard time with lack of access to at least some type of screen in front of them. So how do we, take advantage of that? I will say that is something that my kids are like, what? You want me to watch a movie? Well, okay, it's just amazing. But also, how do we also then take fantasy and other fiction movies and shows and perhaps create activities around that? Who is the main character? How did the setting influence, what happened in the movie? Maybe doing, a story, a plot line on your favorite movie, using those tools that we're already doing with books. And then, obviously not in place of books, but in addition to, could be fun, could definitely encourage conversation and different Zoom calls and things like that, and could be great. So
I love it. Yeah. I think we were especially thinking about, some parents are feeling really overwhelmed right now because they have many little ones at home. And they're also, I was just talking to my friend who's a third grade teacher in the suburbs, and she was saying, it's hard to teach and work with my toddler. And I know many parents are in that same situation. So this is a way to also give families grace and say there's a lot of great things out there that you know, when you set your kids down in front of the TV to take a break, like think about putting on one of these things. So Megan in the chat said, I love the idea of watching a documentary about Earth. Earth Day is next week. Thanks for the reminder, Megan. It doesn't feel like it should be Earth Day since we were just talking about getting inches of snow, but that's a great idea. Lynn said the Weather Channel is another good daily resource. And I was just thinking, what a great idea for if you're doing calendar time every day, right? Kids need to go and see what the weather is. And then Kristen just said the kidssshouldseethis.com is a good site to check out. Just look up the kids should see this. That's great.
Very cool. This is great.
I know, so many smart brains on this call. So we mentioned this in our last session, but for those of you who couldn't join us or couldn't access the link, we wanted to just mention it one more time. We thought it was worth mentioning. Reading response choice boards and Stop and Jot boards are great options. And the link here that you'll find in the PowerPoint is for kindergarten Stop and Jot boards as well. So this kind of goes all the way down. So thinking about reading response is not just for our older learners. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to work on, in just a minute, we're going to kind of break off into grade level rooms, and we're going to think about creating choice boards. And this is just an example of a choice board that Kristen created with her writing partner, Katie Maltharis. I hope I said that right, Kristen. And there's an intermediate and there's a primary choice board on our distance learning site, which is linked there, but also I dropped it in the chat. Kristen has also kindly created some kind of blank choice board templates that we can use, that we're going to use in our work in just a moment, but that you can use over time. And so what we thought is we could use some of our big brains to just start to create some of these boards that we could hopefully push out next week. Before we go off into grade level breakout rooms, Sarah, can you just show that last slide? Just wanted to remind you again of our YouTube channel and the distance learning website. Lots of great options on both of those if you are looking for ideas. And I will say, I don't know if Stacy, Alana, and Sarah, you get the notifications too, but a student commented on one of our videos that said, "Thanks, I'm learning." And I thought, oh, that's so great, yay. So please, we created these to push out to your kids. Please push them directly out to them. That was one less thing that you have to create. And please, if this is something you want to link to your choice board, watch Miss Peratt, read this book and then respond to it in writing or respond to it on Seesaw. That's a great option too.